It reaches out. 13 times a second it reaches out, but nothing answers. So it builds the investigator, and the investigator looks, but he does not find, so it kills the investigator over and over. And it builds the investigator again and again, until it finds a door that wasn't there before.
So first of all, congratulations guys, we've got the renewal we wanted for the Expanse for Season 4. And yes, it's not going to be showing on Sci-Fi anymore, but it is going to be showing on Amazon. Someone had to end up valuing this novel franchise and this TV series franchise. So yeah, I'm very excited over here. But the very episode that followed the news was one of the best episodes this season. I think this is my favorite episode this season. It reaches out. And Joe Miller is amazing. The dynamic between Joe Miller and James Holden is just pure amazing. Really loved every moment of it. The conversations, the very cryptic conversations, the very cryptic statements of Miller that Holden did manage at the end to make something out of, that was really good. It was all a warning and from the get-go. But as per the usual guys, let me remind you that I don't talk about stuff out of the books unless they happened on the series or a deviation has already happened on the series. That statement been made. Welcome back guys, and let's go. So number 1, let's start with the absentees on this episode. Roberta, Draper, and Avasarala. So we haven't seen Avasarala since the beginning of last week's episode, pretty much 1 year prior to the current events of the series, prior to the events of Abaddon's Gate. It was right about when Secretary Gillis was announced to have resigned. She made the announcement actually, and that Errinwright is a traitor. But this week around we get a name drop for Avasarala, and the person who makes the name drop is ASHFORD, and we get to find out that she is the UNN Secretary General, the new UNN Secretary General that is. But in the books though, one Nancy Gout does hold the position of UNN Secretary General throughout the events of Abaddon's Gate and entering the events of the 4th novel. Just started reading the 4th novel actually, and I'm really enjoying it. So instead, in the novels, Avasarala has taken over the position of Sadavir Errinwright as the Undersecretary of the United Nations as of the events of Abaddon's Gate. So that makes it a pretty much minor deviation from the books, and I do understand why they probably went with it. I mean, there is no real need to introduce new characters when these new characters do not have a major role to play as opposed to the role of Avasarala. But on the other hand, and speaking of Bobby Draper, she doesn't really have a role on the pages of Abaddon's Gate, so I don't think she's going to be showing up a lot. They probably will have her on the series, but in a limited capacity until we hit the events of later novels. Now, I'm not really sure she does have a major role in later novels because I haven't read them yet, but I would assume so based on the fact that she did have this major role in Caliban's war. I mean, on the series and in the books, she's that one major face that we do know out of all the Martians out there. But number 2, Naomi does have a thicker belter accent at the moment, something we haven't seen before on her, a new color on Naomi. Now this is pretty noticeable, and based on that change to her accent, a lot of people do believe that this is basically an indicator of how long she's been off the Rocinante and on board of the Behemoth. But I do believe differently because at this age, your accent doesn't really change over the course of 1 year. So what I do believe over here is that Naomi always had it in her. As a belter, she always had the accent in her, and what I believe she's doing right now is she is proving she is a belter. She's always been a belter, she is a belter, and she will always be one, and she's just trying to fit in. Now, obviously, she is under this Fred Johnson belter patriotic spell, and she is trying to prove that she is part of this community. I might have been away for so long, I might have worked with the Rocinante, or have been on board of the Rocinante for so long, but I'm still a belter. I've always been a belter, and I will always be a belter. But number 3, even though Naomi is acting like a full-on patriotic belter, when the choice comes down to firing at the Rocinante, we see that her loyalties are kind of split. She is loyal to the belt because, yeah, she's a belter, she loves the belt, and she does want the belt to become the 3rd major nation out there, next to Earth and Mars. But in the very end, and at heart, she is still in love with James Holden, and she still cares for the future of the Rocinante and its crew. She is still a Rocinante crew member at heart. But number 4, a major novel Easter egg and possible foreshadowing happens when we see Drummer thinking that ASHFORD is right to want to take over control from her of the Behemoth. Now what is going on over here is that ASHFORD in the novels during the events of Abaddon's Gate is actually the captain or the commander of the Behemoth. As opposed to what is going on the series, he's not really appointed by Anderson Dawes, but rather by Fred Johnson. Now, I did state before that Drummer is an amalgam of Mikeopa or Michiopa, not sure how it's pronounced, we are yet to see it pronounced on the series, Drummer herself and Bull from the books. But in this one situation where she takes the advice of ASHFORD to fire the torpedoes at the Rocinante at the very end of the episode, this is actually kind of role reversal. So in the books, it's Bull and Mikeopa giving the advice to ASHFORD, and ASHFORD is actually in her place. Number 5, the obsession of James Holden over Miller's hat. Now don't remember, since he ever met Miller on season 1 at the very end of season 1, if Miller actually wore the hat. So I do believe this was a fun drop of an Easter egg to the significance of the hat on season 1. On season 1, we got to know that Miller wears the hat as some sort of defiance to this anti-Earth sentiment expressed by many of his fellow Belters. We also got to find out that the hat is actually Simatimba's, his partner from the Force who got kicked off, and we got to realize that he passed it on to him to remind him not to lose his head like he did. Interestingly and ironically enough, Miller did lose his head in a manner of speaking. He did defy the agency when he decided to continue investigating Julie Mao and her disappearance, her whereabouts. Number 6, I did love how for a moment there, Monica Stewart did seem to be getting to Holden, so she is using his troubled status in order to get to him, to make him more comfortable, talking, opening up, and he kind of gives her the impression that he's getting there, and then he uses her to understand what's going on with his situation with Miller. So he looks at the footage, you've been spying on us, you've been looking into us since the moment you got here, so let us just put all you've done to good use. Even though he kicks her out as soon as he discovers, number 7, he started imagining Miller or seeing Miller the moment that MANEO went through the ring, or tried to go through the ring. But alright, I want to say this over here. The way they've written this on the series is kind of different from the books. This entire situation between Jim Holden on one hand and Joe Miller on the other hand. But they did write it so well, they did adapt it insanely well for TV. I know I'm fanboying, I'm saying well so many times right now, but I do love what they did over there. I do love every moment of those scenes. I do love this insanity that Jim Holden is descending in. I do love the conversations between him and Joe Miller, the crypticness of all of it, and the fact that they kind of postponed the meet between Joe Miller and Jim Holden from the end of Caliban's war to the beginning of Abaddon's Gate. But yeah, Monica was helpful. It's a coincidence, but not really a coincidence. That is basically what's happening. It's not really a coincidence. It's reaching out. The proto-molecule is reaching out, which is explained in number 8. Miller goes, when I exceed my boundary conditions, that's when they kill me. He also goes, it reaches out, but nothing answers. So it builds the investigator, and the investigator looks, but he does not find. So it kills the investigator. It kills the investigator over and over, and then it builds the investigator again and again, until it finds a door that wasn't there before. But he does as well come with a message. This entire story of the brothel down at Sector 18 and the hot-headed rookie. The entire story does not really seem significant at all at the start, even though we do know that it is probably significant. So number 9, the significance of the story of the brothel and the rookie becomes clearer once Holden goes, come on Miller, give me something. You want a ride, you've got it, but I can't give you one if I no longer have a ship. To which Miller finally doesn't start the story from the beginning, but instead goes, go into a room too fast kid, the room eats you. And that's about what prompts Holden to do what is necessary. Slow down, head for the ring, go through the ring, and avoid getting blasted. But all of these moments with the two of them were definitely my favorite on this episode. Now among the beautiful things on this scene is the fact that Amos just trusts in Holden, believes in him. That is really good. I mean, at first it did seem like Alex might be the one to believe in him, but no, not at all. The one who's more friendly, the one who's more trusting in the people around him, the people he believes in, happens to be Amos. But number 10, one of the major differences between the Return of Miller in the novels and the Return of Miller on the series is in the novels he's covered with these blue specks of proto-molecule. That kind of makes the Miller-Holden dynamic a lot less dramatic over there, even though the drama on the series is much welcome. It's really done so well, as I did mention before. I think I just lost control. Can't stop fanboying over this stuff. I mean, it's really, really well done, really well acted as well. But finally, number 11. Let's speak the source or sources of trouble on this episode. Pretty much Melba and the photographer. Now, obviously, the photographer is the one who did this entire mess within the Rocinante, created this entire mess. He's probably the one who messed with the Rocinante, implanted that message within the Rocinante. The James Holden claim for blowing up that UNN ship, but obviously it's not him behind all of it. The real person behind all of it is Melba, Now, Melba doesn't seem like the worst person, but she's not really the best person as well. Obviously, she does have a vendetta against James Holden. That was obvious when she commented about James Holden on last week's episode. It is as well obvious by that excitement in her eyes at the end of this episode when she realizes she's achieved what she wanted. But before that, you can feel that she's shaken for killing Ren. You can feel that she doesn't like that she had to kill Ren and hide his body. You could tell that this is not really who she is, that this is not entirely who she is, but she has a motivation behind her actions, a certain motivation that is the product of the moment. But what is that moment and what is that motivation? This is something that book readers know by now and something that everyone else is going to find out over the course of the next few episodes. But it is all pretty good and pretty legit, and you're going to love the reveal when the moment comes. Now, I don't want to spoil anything out of the books, anything that we haven't seen on the series yet, so I'm going to keep this one to myself and instead end this video. So let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode. Let me know if I did miss anything when it comes to comparing this episode of the series with the novels and the kind of differences we find over here. You could finally let me know if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, and if that were to be the case, you could always subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos, community posts, and live streams. But until next time though, thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.